I heard the knock at the door just after midnight. The sound echoed through the narrow hallway like a slow heartbeat. The house felt colder than usual, as if every wall leaned in to listen. I froze in place. No one visited me at this hour. No one should have. The knock came again, firmer this time. My breath turned shallow. My fingers trembled against the wooden table. For a moment, I thought the sound was only in my mind. But the knock repeated with the same steady rhythm he always used. I felt the memory rush back. The broken promise. The words he swore he would return to complete. Words that belonged to a man who was no longer alive. The hallway stretched out in front of me like a tunnel. The floor creaked under each slow step I took. The air thickened, almost heavy enough to hold. I could hear my heartbeat louder than the knocks. When I reached the door, I placed my hand on the cold metal handle. A strange warmth pulsed from the other side, as if someone was standing inches away. My eyes stung with a sudden dryness. My throat tightened. I whispered his name into the silence. The whisper did not feel like mine. It felt borrowed. It felt afraid. No answer came, only the soft scrape of shoes shifting on the porch. I knew that sound. I knew it too well. I pulled the door open slowly. The wind rushed in first, sharp and icy. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. He stood there. The same man who walked away years ago. The same man who swore he would come back and finish what he started. The same man I buried with my own hands. His face was pale under the trembling light. His eyes did not blink. His clothes looked damp, as if he had walked through rain that never touched the ground. He lifted his hand, the same hand that once held mine with warmth. This time it looked frail and drained of life. His voice came out low and steady. Almost too steady. "I have returned," he said. His cold breath drifted toward me, carrying the scent of earth and something older than decay. The night around us grew silent. Not a single insect moved. Not a single leaf stirred. Only him. Only me. Only the unfinished promise that stood between us like a shadow. He stepped forward. The wooden boards groaned under his weight, but the sound was wrong. Too light. Too hollow. I tried to step back, but my legs refused to move. My hands felt numb. The moonlight touched his face, and the truth slid into view. His skin was cracked in thin lines, as if something inside him struggled to hold the shape of a man. And he smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that did not reach his eyes. Eyes that reflected no light. Eyes that watched me as if he had been waiting in the dark for a very long time. He stopped only an arm's length away. The air between us turned cold enough to sting. He leaned in slightly. His voice whispered against the edge of my ear with perfect clarity. "I came back," he said, "to finish the promise I broke." The words sank into my skin like cold needles. I felt the sound of his voice more than I heard it. Every syllable brushed against my ear as if carried by a wind that touched nothing else around us. My body stiffened. My throat tightened. The night pressed against my back, pushing me toward him instead of away. I forced myself to look up into his unmoving eyes. There was no warmth, no recognition, only a silent demand, a demand tied to the promise he had broken before he left this world. The porch light flickered again. This time it dimmed until his face faded into the shadow. Only the shape of him remained, standing too straight and too still, like something that remembered how to mimic a human shape but not how to breathe like one. He raised his hand toward my shoulder. I felt the air shift. The cold moved closer. My skin tightened as if preparing for a touch it did not want. I stepped back finally, but his fingers brushed my sleeve. The fabric grew damp instantly. It felt as if it had touched soil soaked in night water. A chill spread up my arm and settled in my chest. He watched me with a slight tilt of his head. The motion was smooth, but unnaturally slow. Almost careful. Almost rehearsed. "You remember the promise," he said. His voice sounded distant and near at the same time, like an echo spoken directly into my mind. "You remember what I said on the last night?" My breath caught. I remembered every word. He had made me swear to wait for him. He had sworn he would return to complete what he started. But he had broken that promise long before his heart stopped beating. The night wind pushed against the door behind me. The hinges creaked softly. I felt trapped between the cold darkness outside and the silent rooms inside that suddenly felt unsafe. "You did not wait," he said. The words were not angry. They were empty, empty enough to send a tremor through my spine. I tried to speak, but the words refused to rise. My tongue felt heavy. My lips felt numb. "I looked for you," I finally managed. My voice sounded nothing like my own. It cracked at the edges. It barely reached him. He stepped forward again. This time his movement made the boards beneath him groan louder. Too loud for the weight of one man. The sound vibrated through the porch as if something else pressed down from above. "You did not look in the right place," he said. His eyes shifted toward the darkness at the side of the house. The shadows thickened there, gathering like smoke rising from the earth. I felt a tremor run through the ground. A soft vibration traveled under my feet. The hairs on my arms rose. A metallic taste formed on my tongue. He slowly turned his head back to me. His expression did not change, but something inside his gaze deepened. A hunger, a need, a purpose that belonged to the promise he had returned to complete. "You were supposed to follow me," he whispered. His breath carried the cold scent of earth again. It settled around me like a thin fog. I shook my head, stepping farther back into the doorway. "I could not follow," I said. "You vanished without a word." He lifted his hand again, palm open, fingers stiff and pale. "You were meant to come after me," he said. "That was the promise. One life with me, one death with me, one end shared together." A deep ache spread across my chest. My heartbeat quickened. The air felt too thin to breathe. "You broke that promise," he said softly. "But I have returned to finish it." The shadows at the side of the house began to move. They shifted like figures stepping out from behind a curtain. Shapes formed without sound. Shapes that blended with the darkness but still carried weight. He watched me with unwavering certainty. He took one more step, closing the space between us until his breath touched my skin like cold ash. "You must come with me," he said. "It is time." The cold deepened until the air felt as heavy as water. He stood before me with that same stillness, waiting for the answer he believed was already his. The shadows behind him shifted again. Shapes formed and faded. Silent figures moved in a slow circle, as if guarding a path that led into a place I could not see. Their presence filled the night with a pressure that made my lungs strain. He extended his hand toward me once more. The pale fingers trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from a strange and urgent need. His eyes held no anger, only expectation, a belief that I would step forward and allow the broken promise to finally bind us again. For a long moment, I saw the man I once knew. The warmth he carried in life. The dreams we whispered under softer skies. The oath we made, when we believed that time belonged to us. But the figure before me was not that man anymore. He carried the weight of a place where life no longer moved. A place where promises turned into chains. A place that called to him and now reached for me. I lowered my gaze to his open hand. The cold that poured from it felt like a doorway that would never close if I touched it. My heart beat hard enough to shake my ribs. Fear pressed into my spine, but something else grew beneath it. A memory of his last living words. Words he spoke with the voice of the man he once was. "Live for both of us if I cannot return." He had forgotten that part. But I had not, and I would not allow a broken promise to drag me into the dark. I stepped back from him. The porch boards hissed under my feet. His hand remained in the air, suspended between us like a question he did not expect to hear answered. "I did wait for you," I said. My voice steadied. "I waited longer than my heart could bear. But the promise you made was not for this. You asked me to live. So I will live." A faint tremor ran through his form. The shadows behind him recoiled, shrinking back as if a force pushed him away. His pale eyes flickered with something almost human. Confusion, recognition, a lost memory struggling to rise. The wind shifted. The cold around us thinned. For a moment, he looked smaller. Less certain. Less bound to the dark that waited behind him. He lowered his hand slowly. The tremble returned, but this time it felt different. As if he was losing the strength that kept him standing in this world. His voice softened. "You remember that night," he said. The words wavered like a candle flame. "You held it all this time." I nodded, stepping back into the light of the open doorway. You kept only part of the promise, I said. I will keep the rest. The shadows behind him began to unravel. The figures dissolved into the darkness as if pulled by an unseen tide. His form flickered, colors draining into the night air. He looked at me one last time. His expression carried no hunger now. Only release. Only the quiet understanding of something he had forgotten the moment his heart stopped beating. He whispered one final sentence. A sentence so faint it felt like a breath carried by memory itself. Then I can rest. His shape folded into the shadows. The cold lifted from the air. The night regained its distant sounds. The porch returned to stillness as if nothing had ever stood upon it. I closed the door gently. The house exhaled with me. The weight of the broken promise faded into the walls. I leaned against the wood, letting my heartbeat slow. Letting the warmth return to my skin. And for the first time in years, the night felt like mine again.